WrestleMania took center stage in Jerry's World down in Dallas and took over AT&T Stadium like the Washington football team did in 2020 on Thanksgiving Day. We're talking about that, the latest on the Commanders, and strong statements on both sides as the congressional heat cranks up right now on the Locked On Commanders podcast.
Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, we welcome you aboard to the latest edition of the Locked On Commanders podcast. I'm Chris Russell. David Harrison is out once again for this episode. He will return with a solo episode later on this week, and then we'll reconvene back together again. We appreciate you being with us. Thanks for making us your first listen and your first watch of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day, and your daily podcast on the Locked on the Washington Commanders. Locked On Commanders is free and available on all platforms, including now on YouTube, and we're on Twitter. David is at DHarrison82. I'm at WrestleMania621 and LO Commanders, again, all on Twitter. We thank you for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen of the day. And guys, right now, we are joined. We've been trying to do more of the guest thing and bring you special and different guests. We had AJ Francis on last week before he went to WrestleMania weekend in Dallas. Of course, he spent some time with the then Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders. And right now, I'm joined by someone who I think is really special, who's got a really bright future, I think, pro wrestling star, a diehard Washington Commanders fan, and somebody who's just making waves wherever she goes. It's IzzyMania, and she's running wild right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. Izzy, how are you?
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for that intro and having me on today. I'm doing fantastic. So excited to be talking to you. How are you?
I'm doing great. We appreciate you joining us, and you are back from Dallas, where I know you were a busy camper. You went and were a part of Wrestlecon, which for those that maybe don't know exactly what that is, I know a convention of sorts, right? And I know you were hanging out with the aforementioned AJ Francis and others, but what did Wrestlecon and Izzy be able to hook up and do and tag team with?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, WrestleCon is a giant convention to celebrate pro wrestling. There are several vendors and also guests, like from pro wrestlers to pro wrestling managers to everybody in between. And I had the honor to be working my first WrestleCon this past weekend. It was a lot of fun. I got to meet my fans. I also got to interview all the talent there, which is such a good time. So make sure you keep out for those interviews on my YouTube page. But it was a great time. I love WrestleCon. It's so crazy. I used to attend there as a fan literally like 2 years ago. And now I was there as a guest on the other side of the table, signing autographs, taking pictures with people. It was a huge honor and something that I will never forget.
You know, we mentioned you're a Commanders fan, and we're going to get to that, as people can see on your shirt, proudly wearing the burgundy and gold. How did you take me through how your ascent in popularity is pretty crazy, right? I mean, I met you through social media, right? But this is the first time I think we're talking face to face, and we're not in the same room. But I've seen you just taking over the world, and much like your Twitter handle and also your podcast, which again, it's called the Hot Tag with Izzy, and it's IzzyMania on YouTube, and of course we're on YouTube as well, so people can check out both. Make sure you check out Izzy on YouTube. How did you kind of get into this stream where all of a sudden you're going from just a normal person to now a social media and wrestling kind of superstar in the making?
Yeah, so, I've been a pro wrestling fan ever since I was 4 years old, and I never expected how much of an impact pro wrestling would have on me. You know, some people, they just watch pro wrestling for fun, and it does impact their life. Like, they're able to share it with their family and friends, and they're able to have these on the edge of your seat type moments that you'll never forget. But for me, I've been like fully immersed in it, like many other people in the industry. So it all started when I was about 8 years old, when I fell in love with this pro wrestler named Bailey, and there's something about her that I really liked. I think it was because how different she was, how colorful and vibrant she was. I really stuck to her. So I slowly got to be known as Bailey's biggest fan in NXT. That eventually turned into me dressing up as her. Sasha Banks taking my headband to NXT Takeover Respect, which is something that really I think that moment really was a big stepping stone, because that's when people were like, "Oh, this is Izzy, and this is what she's kind of known for at the time." And for those who don't know, when Sasha Banks stole my headband, I literally bawled my eyes out. So I guess you could say I'm kind of a meme. I don't know. Maybe in the pro wrestling industry, I am a meme. But from there, you know, as I grew older, I wanted to pursue this more than anything. I wanted to be in the ring. So I had my first match at 10 years old. I was training in the ring. That quickly turned into transitioning into jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, which is something I'm still doing. And sprinkling in pro wrestling training is a good time. And then I was presented with an opportunity about 2-3 years ago. Um, and I had to enter the broadcasting industry, which is something that I was very interested in. It was definitely on my bucket list. So I started my own show called The Hot Tag with Izzy. I analyze different pro wrestling shows across the industry, and I interview all pro wrestlers and people a part of the business, which is something that I absolutely love to do. And the great part about it is that I'm very versatile, so I'm able to hop in the ring and be this character, this larger than life character, and then hop on the microphone and be able to analyze something or analyze a match. It's something that I really love to do. So that's really how, you know, throughout the years, I've become this sort of social media star. I don't like saying that like I'm famous or I'm a social media star, but like I like to I say that people know me on social media. So to see the evolution of what I've been able to do over the past few years has been extremely awesome and just so surreal, especially the stuff I've experienced at such a young age. It's really crazy.
I think you're a social media star. You know, like you're more important to me than Logan Paul. I'll tell you that much.
I appreciate that.
I can tell you that. So I don't know if anybody else would agree with that, but that's what I'm going with. That's my statement, and I'm sticking to it. You know, you know, I could probably throw a wrestling keyword or buzz phrase onto that, but I'll just stop there. But you know, it's really cool because I forget how we kind of I kind of stumbled across you. I think it was something you had said about the Commanders or something along the lines, or maybe you said something to one of my tweets. I don't remember how exactly.
I think I remember it. So
Huh?
I think I was already following you or something.
Yeah.
Or we were already following each other somehow.
Yeah.
And you guys were gonna have Mark Henry on your show, and like I know Mark personally, like I sincerely love him to death. And I know he's a Cowboys fan, and you know that doesn't really fit well being on a Commander show. So I literally tweeted you guys, and I was like, "You gotta ask Mark about the Cowboys losing."
That's what it was.
It was right after they lost, and they were out of the playoffs. Like I think that was, I think it was the week after, and you tweeted me, and you were like, "Oh my god!" And then shortly after, you DM'd me, and we had like a full conversation about Mark and AEW. It was, I think that's how it all started.
Yeah, no. Now that you're saying that, I think we had hooked up like right around that time, which is awesome because you're making headlines and headway not only in the world of the WWE but also AEW. And you know, I guess I would ask you this off of WrestleMania weekend, right? Which is like the Super Bowl of sports entertainment, and at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, in Jerry's World, you know, a place I know you and I have both been at separate times, right? That is a palace. I mean, there's, you know, so many cool things that come out of it, but you know, the whole world is buzzing about Pat McAfee and what he did with Vince McMahon, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kevin Owens on Saturday night, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, and all of these different things, what was there a moment that stood out to you from WrestleMania weekend that you go, okay, that was WrestleMania 30. That was WrestleMania 2022 in Izzy's eyes.
Okay, so I gotta say, WrestleMania nights 1 and 2 were so memorable. I think they're going to be so unforgettable. From Sasha and Naomi winning the tag team championships, the main event from night 2, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Pat McAfee, and Vince McMahon. But I gotta say, the one moment that stuck out to me, and I think a lot of people are gonna agree with me on this one, is Cody Rhodes returning to the WWE. I think without a doubt that was one of the biggest moments in WrestleMania history. I think that moment really solidified I don't want to say the competition between AEW and WWE, but literally it did. Cody Rhodes was this guy who pretty much built AEW from the ground up, and he was such a pivotal role in AEW. Literally, we saw him every Wednesday night, we saw him Friday nights, we saw him, doing all the stuff backstage with creative. I'm actually a part of AEW media, so I got to talk to him on media calls and at the media scrums to really, understand how he works and what goes on in AEW. So to see the American Nightmare on WWE at WrestleMania, same theme song, same gear, same everything that we saw in AEW, it was really crazy. And I saw all the rumors that it's going to be him. I didn't want to believe it. I was like, no, there's no way it's Cody. It's going to be somebody else. And when that music hit, I was shocked. I really was, because I was not expecting it. I was like, there's no way. There's so much that's tied to AEW that's associated with Cody. So when that moment happened, I was shocked. So I think Cody returning to WWE was the highlight of WrestleMania nights 1 and 2. And not to overshadow everybody else, I got to say, WrestleMania as a whole was great, but Cody Rhodes returning was something else.
All right, we're being joined by Izzy from, of course, the Hot Tag with Izzy. Make sure you check her out on YouTube and also on Twitter at IzzyMania. That's at IzzyMania on Twitter. She's a future pro wrestling star, in my opinion, and I think others, and a diehard Commanders fan, as you can see by her shirt. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Commanders and also what Ezekiel Elliott and Micah Parsons were asked about at AT&T Stadium before WrestleMania over the weekend. That is next, guys, right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. But first, guys, it's Chris Russell here for Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They'll send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, why don't you head to shadyrays.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off or 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Again, that's code LOCKED ON for their best deal of the season. 50% off, guys. 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. It's Shady Rays. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen each and every day and your first watch. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're following along the Locked On NFL podcast, Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Once again, we're joined by IzzyMania at It's IzzyMania, on Twitter, and of course, host of the Hot Tag with Izzy on YouTube, where you can check her out, where you can also check out the Locked On Commanders podcast. And Izzy, so I wanted to ask you this before we get into a couple of things with the Washington Commanders. Peter Rosenberg of WWE, Hot 97, ESPN New York, mutual pal of ours. He had the opportunity to have, he's on the WWE pre-show, I guess, and he had the opportunity to have both Ezekiel Elliott and Micah Parsons on there. I missed this one, but you saw it, and I guess Peter tried to get them to quit the Dallas Cowboys. Is that right?
Oh my goodness. So I was literally watching the pre-show, and I know Peter Rosenberg is a huge Commanders fan. Actually, we actually follow each other, and Michael Parkinson's and Ezekiel, they get on the panel, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this isn't happening. And even if Peter wasn't there, I was not happy that those two were there. I mean, get them off my TV. I don't want to see them till next season. But when he said that, I was like, good for you, Peter. Take command, literally. And I actually tweeted him, and I was like, thank you so much for representing the Commanders. We need some good representation on the biggest show of all, WrestleMania.
That's great. That's great. Take command, Peter. Please take command and kick them off the stage. Break their legs so that they can't hurt the Commanders. All right. So that brings us, of course, to this portion of our time together. How did you become a Commanders fan? I know you've told me this story, but it's kind of crazy, right? Because you don't live in the Washington, D.C. area, and you don't have to say where you live if you don't want to. I think it's public, but you don't have to say it. But you don't live in the Washington, D.C. area, so you're not a naturally born Washington Redskins / Commanders fan, right?
No, so I actually live in Orlando, Florida, which is very far away from Washington, D.C. It all started, my grandfather and my dad, they both grew up watching the Washington Redskins. And they're not even from DC either. So, I'm not really sure what led them. I believe my grandfather had one of his favorite players was on the Redskins, so I guess that's how it all happened. Mm-hmm. But that eventually turned into me religiously watching the Washington football team / Washington Commanders every single Sunday. And I haven't turned back. I haven't looked back at all. I love it. Sundays are a very special day for me and my parents. Lots of barbecues. Last season, we really got into ordering Sonny's barbecue, literally getting it catered to us. And we would get this giant, platter full of just barbecue and sides. Oh my God, it's amazing. I recommend it to literally everyone. We actually named my dog after RG3. His name is Griff, by the way. So Griff the third. Griff. He runs just as fast as RG3, for those wondering. But yeah, I literally became a Commanders fan through my dad. And I feel like I really got into football 2020 because, most of us didn't have anything to do. It was the pandemic. So that's when I really watched it. I watched the draft when Chase Young got drafted to Washington, and that's when I was like, okay, I definitely need to watch this season because I'm so invested in this, and I'm excited for the season. But yeah, it's kind of funny how it all happened. I literally just started to watch with my dad, and after that, I started to get a lot of Washington merchandise, literally. And I went to my first home opener last year, and I think we played the Chargers.
Yep, the Chargers.
The Chargers. Yep. I was very sad that we lost, but it was a good time. I had a good time. The energy there was incredible. Literally, I felt it, and it was just so much fun to be there. I love being a Commanders fan.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you. You said so you went to the Chargers game, but you said this year. I think you're planning on going to a couple of games, right? Now, of course, you're yes. Again not. You're based in Orlando, Florida. The stadium is in Landover, Maryland. So you're a diehard when you're making that trip, right? You and your dad and family are coming up to cheer on the Burgundy and Gold. So that, I guess it must not be as bad of an experience for Izzy as it is for a lot of Commanders fans.
No, so I remember telling you this. I don't remember how many games we said that we're going to go to. I don't remember that's the whole plan. But we want to start a tradition, me, my mom, and my dad, to go to every home opener because we had so much fun at the last one. We were like, why not go to everyone every year? So we're definitely going to the home opener. I think we're going to another home game, and then we might go to 2 other away games. I know we were talking about we want to go to the game when we play the Colts because that's to me an interesting game for sure. We all know why. I forgot the other game that we said that we want to go to. I gotta ask my dad because he knows. I think he's been planning out. And it's so funny. We were actually going to get season tickets. We were so close to getting them. But literally, we thought about it and we were like, with hotel flights and rental cars, it's a lot. So,
it's tough.
Yeah, I was excited. I really thought we were going to get season tickets. Maybe one day. Maybe when I'm closer to D.C. and I'm not all the way to Florida.
What do you think of Carson Wentz? Are you excited?
Okay, so we had this conversation on Twitter, and I have hope. I know at first everybody wasn't excited. Don't get me wrong. I was praying to God, to the football gods, for Russell Wilson. Literally, like I was like, get me some Russell Wilson. Let the Washington Commanders cook with Russell Wilson. But I'm not mad at Carson Wentz. I think, um, I like to keep this in mind. When he went from the Eagles to the Colts, he was under the same system, same coach. Now he's going under a new system with Ron Rivera. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think we're going to see a lot from him. Remember, he's got Terry McLaurin. I think those two are going to be really good together. But I'm excited to see what he can do. I have hope. I really do. I hope he takes command, literally.
Um, so in the last couple of years, we've gone from Redskins to Washington football team to Commanders. 1, 2, 3, which of course for us wrestling fans, we know is what you need to get a victory. Kind of symbolic right there. What do you make of Commanders?
Oh, okay. So I actually like the name. I really do. I think it represents the DMV very well. I like the whole take command thing. That hashtag alone is so great. And it's also very marketable. I think once we get a mascot too, people are gonna be really happy. I think if we get the hog, like a little military hog, I think that would look really cool and make people ultra happy. But I've liked the name since the day they announced it. I think it's been great. I didn't mind Washington football team. I wasn't gonna be mad if we kept that, but I like Commanders. I really do. And I'm so happy I'm not gonna be made fun of all the time that I love a team that doesn't have a name. Like I got made fun of at school 24/7 because of that, and now I like the Commanders.
She's a pro wrestling superstar on the rise and a social media superstar. Again, make sure you go check out our girl Izzy with the hot tag with Izzy. And again, it's IzzyMania on Twitter and social media, on YouTube and all. Izzy, when we return and we head for our final segment here, I'm just going to ask you for a quick season prediction coming up. And we're going to also let our audience know about a couple of strong statements made about the Dan Snyder and ticket sharing and revenue developments that we're going to have for you on the other side. But Izzy is going to join us, and she's going to give us her prediction, her season prediction for the upcoming 2022 year. But guys, this is the time of the year that we've all given up on our New Year's resolutions, right? We're starting to struggle in terms of our workout routine, our diets maybe. We're starting to eat out a little bit more. But one thing that can help you is Built Bar. That's right. And Built Bar Puffs. If you want to eat healthy, if you want to eat great, and if you want to feel like you're not missing out on something really good, again, check out our friends at Built Bar and Built Bar Puffs. The Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. The fluffy, marshmallowy, all the different flavors. We tell you all the time about banana cream pie. I love banana cream pie. So good. They are going to be your favorite. And of course, the Built Bars are 100% covered in soft and easy to chew chocolate and very good for you. Low in calories, high in protein, low in net carbs, and all of that great stuff. Check them out, built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, by using the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, wrapping up with our girl Izzy at It's IzzyMania. I keep stumbling over that. I apologize. At It's IzzyMania. It's a mouthful, I can tell you that much. Follow her on social media. Watch the hot tag with Izzy on YouTube. Of course, you can follow and watch us on YouTube as well. So watch all of us, right? Spend your whole life on YouTube as long as you download, subscribe, all of that good stuff. All right, Iz. It's time. I know it's early. I know we haven't had the draft yet, but what are we feeling? 17-game season, 2022, Carson Wentz in the fold. Are we feeling 10 wins, 12 wins, or maybe not that bold?
Okay, so last year we were 7-10. I feel like this year we have a good possibility to go 10-7.
Oh, all right.
I really do. I just want to keep in mind, the Commanders have a way easier schedule this year. I mean, if you just look at last year's schedule compared to this year's, much easier. Also, the COVID pools, that's not going to be too much of an issue. But literally last year, I feel like we lost to the COVID rules of the NFL. Now, I understand we got to keep our players safe, keep everybody safe, but that was a really unfortunate thing that happened to us. Remember, we got Carson, Commander Carson is here. Like I said, I got a lot of hope from him, and Chase Young is coming back. I think we're going to be stacked. And I think with the draft coming up, I think we need another wide receiver to complement Terry McLaurin. I really think this season is going to be a good season. I think it's going to be a building season. It's going to be a learn type of season, if you know what I'm saying. I think it's going to be a good season. I think it's going to be fun. We're on a good side.
In other words, you think they're going to take command. Chase and Carson are going to take command, right?
Chase and Carson are going to take command. They're going to take command.
And Izzy's going to be there on opening weekend at FedEx Field. Absolutely. Before we run out of time, I just wanted to pass along these couple of news and notes. DeAndre Carter, kick returner, punt returner, wide receiver, really good story for the Commanders last year, visiting with the Chicago Bears. Also, there's some reported interest in Maryland native and D.C. area native Joe Hayden, who last played with the Pittsburgh Steelers and has, of course, started his career with the Cleveland Browns. Before we run out of time, but I don't know how much you've been paying attention to this, but unfortunately, this is my job, and I'm immersed in it every day. Dan Snyder and the ticket revenue thing, whatever. We have two strong statements that I got to read just so that our audience, in case they haven't heard them, the Commanders have issued a strong statement saying, quote, there has been absolutely no withholding of ticket revenue at any time by the Commanders. Those revenues are subject to independent audits by multiple parties. Anyone who offered testimony suggesting a withholding of revenue, has committed perjury, plain and simple. That from a Washington Commanders team spokesperson. Now, Lisa Banks, one of the lawyers that are representing all of the different ex-employees that have come forward, and Jason Friedman, who has become a big-time player, as we talked about with AJ Perez on our last episode, said in response to this, the Washington Commanders just released a statement to members of the media. In that statement, they defamed my client, Jason Friedman, who came forward at the request of the Congressional Oversight Committee and testified truthfully with evidence. Unfortunately, Mr. Friedman is unable to defend himself publicly due to contractual constraints that prevent him from speaking freely. He would be happy to recount his testimony if Dan Snyder and the Washington Commanders allow him to do so. I will await their response. That from Lisa Banks, one of the attorneys. Izzy, real quickly, in wrapping this up, I don't know how much you're following this. It's a nightmare to deal with. But this is your favorite football team. Does this drive you crazy?
It does. I could keep it up a little bit, because I've, literally, WrestleMania week was just so, I had so much to prepare for, literally 3 weeks in advance. So, I really didn't have time to keep up with everything. But I have been seeing this type of stuff, and it does drive me crazy. I just want everything to go smooth sailing into the season. Chase Young is coming back, Commander Carson. Let's just glide in. And also, we have a new name, people.
Yes.
Let's keep it clean. Come on, we're the Commanders. Take command. Dan Snyder isn't taking command, that's for sure. And he needs to take command and figure out what he needs to do.
That's great. Dan Snyder, take command, damn it.
Take command. Take command, please.
I don't even know if Dan Snyder knows that he named the team the Commanders. He's got so much legally going around him. I'll tell you who's taking command. Congress is taking command of Dan Snyder's future. That's who's taking command. All right, we're out of time, but I really want to thank you for joining us. I appreciate you making some time for us. I know you're busy back off your WrestleMania trip. I'm so jealous in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. Jerry's World, one of the best football. Even though the Cowboys are a lousy football team, we can both agree AT&T Stadium is pretty cool, right?
It is. I went there for WrestleMania 32. Beautiful.
Awesome. I've been there 7 times, and I always say it's always better when the Commanders, then Redskins / football team / whatever the heck they are, actually come away with a win, as they have a couple of Thanksgivings, as we mentioned at the top. Again, people can follow you again on Twitter at It's IzzyMania. Too many I's in there. At It's IzzyMania. And also watch the Hot Tag with Izzy on YouTube, right?
Yeah, so you can actually watch the Hot Side of Izzy on Twitter as well. A lot of my longer videos are on YouTube, but literally you can find me on everything: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and pro wrestling tees across the board. It's IzzyMania.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining us, and just hang tight. We'll say goodbye in a second off. We want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and first watch of the day. Come back for the next episode. David Harrison will be solo, and then we'll be back together before the end of the week. Now make your second listen and watch the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker, as they bring the NFL draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. You want to hop in, 301-615-3577 or lockedonwashingtoncommanders@gmail.com. That's going to do it for us today. Commanders fans, thanks again for joining us, and thanks to Izzy for being with us. We are free and available on all platforms. For David Harrison, who's covering the Commanders on SI.com's Fan Nation, I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 and the Audacy app. We'll be back right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.